4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run. Inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line.
Manning out of the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
Rushing ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him free to the 30, to the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first.
And welcome to the show, everybody. I am Undungus Creevy alongside my co-host Glenn Hauser, Mr. Boggins, and Cameron Parker. We are a fan-led Broncos-based podcast on the MHRT Network. You are currently watching the 5280 podcast. Goes live every Tuesday at 7654 on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We also have the brand new Wild Wild West podcast tomorrow and every Wednesday henceforth at 7:30, 6:30, 5:30, 4:30. And that's our AFC West podcast that features fans from all 4 AFC West teams battling it out live. Then we have the Nothing Rhymes podcast every Thursday and Broncos Breakdown with Bronco Bill on Friday. And both of those are at 7, 6, 5, 4. Bree is not on today. She was not feeling well, so we gave her the night off because, you know, everybody's got to have a night off every once in a while. Except for Glenn. He doesn't get one.
That's right. That's what I thought as well.
But I did want to bring up, and I know that they brought it up on the Nothing Rhymes podcast. We have a merch store now.
We do?
Absolutely no pressure, except if you don't buy stuff, don't come back. No, I'm kidding. But we got stuff from the 5280 podcast. We've got Broncos Breakdown, Bronco Bill, Wild Wild West. Click on the designs tab down here, and there's all the shows and the network right here. We got hoodies, shirts. I've got a shirt on right here for the 5280 podcast. I know that most of us have ordered some, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised at the quality of the merchandise. It's really soft. The designs came out well. Even with those little mini, like the caricature photos of us, look really clear and really good. So go ahead and you can go to our Twitter or our Facebook or our YouTube, and there are links in the descriptions. You can go ahead and click on that and buy away, sirs and madams. So I wanted to start the show off kind of on a somber note. We want to send all of our thoughts and prayers out to Dwayne Haskins' family, his loved ones. Very unfortunate incident. When was that? That was yesterday, or was that Sunday?
It was a few days ago. Yeah.
Very unfortunate incident. He was out there in South Florida practicing with teammates, and I won't go into all the details, but he ended up passing away. So thoughts and prayers from us to his friends and his family in this difficult time. So going from there to Bobby Wagner, there was a lot of chatter this offseason about Bobby Wagner coming to the Broncos. He did not. He ended up at the Rams. They lost Von Miller, though. So is there going to be that big of a difference between a Von Miller and a Bobby Wagner? Obviously, they play different positions, but, you know, it's kind of a big loss and a big gain at the same time.
I mean, you know, I know for myself, I was not, you know, wanting Bobby Wagner on the Denver Broncos, right? You know, I don't think I wanted Bobby Wagner on the Denver Broncos. Okay, I did. But anyway.
Yeah. I was going to start getting receipts pulled up. Like, wait a minute.
No, I think the way that it's the same as far as you're not going to lose anything would be the locker room. And, you know, and that's probably the glaring point where you're probably going to see the similarities. But I will say, I think you'll see, you know, the defense probably still be roughly the same. The pass rush is probably going to be right at where it is because you still got Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd still there. So I mean, you're still talking about a still relatively really good defense, and you're also talking about a linebacker that wanted to go home, right? And I mean, he's from Los Angeles, and he also maybe wanted to stick it to Seattle, in division, almost like what it's been sometimes in the past when, San Diego Charger at the time, wanted to sign with the Denver Broncos, or on the flip side, a Denver Bronco wanted to sign with the San Diego Chargers, or now Los Angeles Chargers, to kind of stick it to the Broncos. So it's happened before.
Yeah, personally, I didn't necessarily want Bobby Wagner on. Not that I didn't want Bobby Wagner. I wasn't willing to pay what it would have cost for him, plus being the oldest starting linebacker in the NFL. It was kind of not something that really intrigued me that much, but I, like Cameron was saying, him going home it was almost guaranteed, and getting to play out his career there, and to also stick it to the Seahawks. Because I mean, coming from the Seattle side of things, let's just say there is some animosity in there from Seahawk players when they leave. It seems like, I don't know if it's necessarily John Snyder or if it's Pete Carroll, but when Earl Thomas left, there was bad blood. Bobby, I mean, it seemed like
just a little bit,
just a little bit. It's not it's not unusual. Let's just
your arms are that long.
Yeah.
Get out of the screen.
And I did like it's interesting that we have all these players signing guaranteed contracts. I saw on NFL Network, I think it was NFL Now. JC Tepper, is he the player rep, the head player rep for the contract negotiations and things like that for the NFLPA?
Yeah,
he was talking about. He said that he wanted every player to push for guaranteed contracts from now
on. I mean, I guess
that's big. That's a lot.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, any chance you can get the kind of deal that Bobby Wagner was able to pull, I mean, you're going to take that deal regardless if you're going home or not. You're going to be taking that deal 10 times out of 10. And I guess aside from like the whole, Bobby Wagner to Denver or Bobby Wagner to the Rams, it wasn't necessarily the fit that surprised me of him going there. I mean, it was more the contract, and I mean the $10 million a year was sort of expected, but when you see the escalators that go all the way up to $65 million, and and then you go up to the fact that you're talking about like 5-year deal with that too. For a guy that is 33, it's a lot. It is a lot of money.
Well, the NFL, these contracts always, when you actually see the nuts and bolts of the contract after the agent originally announces it, it typically works out to be a 2 or 3 year deal anyway. So that Bobby Wagner will not see that $50 million, but it sure sounds good. So I mean, the
right.
likelihood that these players are going to be getting guaranteed contracts is just, I can't see that gaining much traction, at least on the ownership side.
And it's funny. That was the argument for Von Miller, right, Glenn? Because it was just like he signed that ridiculous deal with the Buffalo Bills, but one thing we were saying was just there's no way he's seeing all 6 of those years.
He'll see probably $60 million, right? I think that was a $54 million guarantee. So Vaughn will see $60 million, which is nothing to sneeze at with the amount of money that he's already made. He'll exceed $100 million, right? So it's the Rams made out pretty well if they didn't have to pay that much up front.
Right.
Yeah. Now there is one team, and this was kind of breaking, I think an hour or two ago. There is one team that is not doing so well, and that is the Commanders, because they decided to screw some customers out of $5 million and the NFL and the owners out of money. Since Boggin said it before we went on the air, like it took the Commanders screwing the owners out of money before we potentially see Snyder get replaced.
It's funny how that happens. I think a lot of the owners weren't supporting him were supporting him, or at least not lobbying against getting him out of there, because of essentially what they had going on in their in their closets, so to speak, and they probably didn't want to be in jeopardy of losing their own franchises. But once you steal from the pot, I think now you're in jeopardy. And the fact that he was keeping deposits instead of refunding them for season ticket holders is compounds the issue.
Let's just say they're going to be in the Broncos situation soon by trying to find a new owner, but it might be fast tracked.
Well, I think the new owner lives near you, Boggins.
Yeah, potentially.
Well, and I told him before the started, like Washington was the team that he wanted to buy, and by he I mean
Jeff Bezos. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Because everyone's like, I want Bezos to buy the Broncos. He never wanted to buy the Broncos. He wanted to buy the Commanders. Well,
he probably knew it was a matter of time. This guy was such a scumbag.
Watch him change the name again.
You know what? I wouldn't mind that. I am not.
I don't think many people would. I don't think Washington commies is something people want to chat.
No.
Well, I was gonna say that was like one of the funniest things, the funniest ordeals when the Washington changed their name, or I should say when they were going through the whole ordeal of changing their name, from the Redskins to the Washington football team. But I'll never forget when that happened, because the minute that it broke that they were going to go change their name, within 20 minutes, there were already better ideas for the name of the Washington, football team than there was, for what they came up with. And so the fact that, they spent like a whole year to come back and circle back and go to Washington, and go to the Washington football team, and then to circle back and go to Washington Commanders. Really, the only cool thing about Washington Commanders is really those black uniforms. That's about the only thing that's really cool about, the Commanders right now.
Raiders,
the Commandos,
Raiders Zach says the Rams can continue to add void years to all their contracts all they want. They'll win now, but they'll pay the price at some point.
Oh yeah,
don't disagree.
Yeah, but they have also been doing it for a while. Like this is just their strategy. As long as they can keep. Oh my gosh,
McVay.
Yeah. Wow. Brain just stopped. I mean, by reports, it seemed like he was really, really considering retiring last year. So, like, if it's really a possibility, you're just trying to run it back as long as you have McVay and Aaron Donald, who also was rumored to be potentially hanging it up. But so yeah, man, we'll see.
All right, so let's get into some Broncos news. So I would say the biggest one so far is the return of Kareem Jackson on a 1-year contract, and we had Malik Reed sign his RFA tender. Now Johnny wants to know what we see the roles of K-Jack and Malik being since they signed back with the Broncos. And for me, honestly, I think both of them are rotational.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think that Kareem Jackson, I think, is a really interesting one because you could probably argue, that, he'll probably, maybe be a starter. It just depends on certainly where the Broncos are comfortability-wise with Caden Stearns and taking that next step. I will say, though, that you cannot say no to multiple chess pieces on your defense. And the fact that Kareem Jackson has previous experience with corner, in his career, and then with safety, I think there's a possibility that, we talked about how Baron Browning could be like that multifaceted, linebacker that they use on the front seven, if you will. Kareem Jackson could be maybe that multifaceted defensive, secondary piece on that back end, that they could use because of the fact that he's been used as corner and now safety. So I wouldn't be surprised with it.
Well, and wasn't it Broncos Country tonight with Ben and Ryan? I think they were talking about the same thing, and they were saying, with Kareem Jackson, you can have him kind of be that guy that can spy the runner or the quarterback or someone coming around in the slot, and you can have Stearns and Simmons be your traditional safeties. So you can kind of move him around to whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, if we're going to be using a 6 DB set, you're going to see them both utilized pretty well. I don't know how much you want Kareem up there scraping across with his small frame, but I definitely think
so
they
hard.
they will be. I mean, when he gets speed going, he will be utilized for sure. It's kind of tough. It would be tough to call him a starter or not, or rotation. I mean, I think him and Caden will both be equally rotational / be in there at the same time in certain sets. Malik, I think, is rotational. I maybe not even make the initial or the final 53, like depending on what we do in the draft. It still seems like, from what I've heard, that the Broncos, they're looking at potentially still 2 edges in the draft. So it would be unlikely that he is still on the roster if that's the case. But maybe.
Yeah, well, and Glenn, there's been talk that Kareem Jackson might not make the 53 either. You think that's a possibility or no?
I think that's more unlikely just because of our depth there, unless they feel really confident with like a PJ Locke, or if we pick up a safety in the draft, maybe. I don't know.
Boggins, what do you think of Jamar Johnson? Like, what do you think he's going to get an opportunity this year? He was the only draft pick that didn't really, aside from Joe Vincent, didn't really play at all.
I sure hope so. He was my safety one coming in. He had a lot to work on, but man, was he a ball hawk. He was really fun to watch. If he can stay healthy and really get in there, I think he has a chance. But we'll see the kind of opportunity he actually gets, because if we decide, I mean, PJ Locke looked good last year, so it's going to be he's very much so going to be on the bubble with him, PJ Locke, and pretty much them, and then we'll see if we pick up like a Petrie or something in the draft and really see what happens.
Didn't PJ Locke just sign his tender too with Reed?
He did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really do think that if you were a betting man, I think Malik Reed's spot on the roster is way more in doubt than Kareem Jackson's, and that's just my thinking. Because I mean, and especially with his versatility too, and the stuff that Kareem Jackson can offer. I mean, and if the Broncos do add 2 edge players, I think you are automatically talking about Reed's spot on the roster being such a hot spot. I will say, even to that point, the fact that Broncos did not, give him like an original tender or maybe not original tender, but like a first or second round tender. But the fact they gave him a right to refusal tender, meaning that a team could actually come in and give him a deal that maybe Malik Reed wanted and to sign, tells me that the Broncos were more than fine if Malik Reed went elsewhere. Because at that point, I mean, you're basically daring a team to give him that type of deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Reed is truly on that hot bubble.
I thought Cam was talking about KFC with all this original tenders, but
no,
I'm hungry.
Malik, I believe Malik actually isn't he our sack leader for the last 2 years? Didn't he have 20 sacks? And here we are, the guys, in real jeopardy of not being on this team this year. And quite honestly, I was surprised that this it's even gone this far. Based on the other players that we had up and coming, and the desire to bring more edge rushers into the mix. So it'll be interesting. I mean, he seems like a good guy, and he's certainly performed well, and he stepped in when needed. And there's certainly been a need the last couple of years for him. And it should be an interesting position to keep an eye on.
I'll make sure. I was gonna say I'll make sure to go to Raising Cane's for those chicken tenders.
Oh, you're not kidding.
And now that I'm all starved.
When you look at our edge, who's our number one? Is it Chubb or is it Gregory?
I think it's Chubb currently right now, but I mean, I think that there's an argument, and we've talked about this before, but I think that the Broncos do have maybe one of the biggest boom or bust edge rushers in the division, and that's just simply because of the high quality that they have there. But I I mean, I'm still probably going to give the edge to Bradley Chubb. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a Pro Bowler versus a guy who, has been kind of scrapping to get his career back with Randy Gregory and not necessarily make a Pro Bowl. So,
okay.
See, I look at it the other way, Cam. I think that Gregory's the top guy versus Chubb just based on his injury history.
And I think that there's an argument for Gregory, though. I mean, if we're going surely on talent alone, I would say that Randy Gregory is the better talent between Bradley Chubb and him. And so I think that I absolutely do.
Is that Nebraska bias?
No.
Is that what that is?
No.
I know. I did comment that every one of your mock drafts miraculously has a Nebraska guy in it.
Well, so and the thing that's just so funny is just the fact that, aside from the fact I went to the spring game this last weekend, but I mean, that Nebraska's needs this year are like, ironically enough, needs for Denver this year. Because I mean, like, you got Cam Taylor-Britt at corner, you got Cam Jurgens, who actually had a top 30 visit, with the team at center, and then you have Austin Allen, who's a 6'7", 6'9" tight end. I mean, so it's kind of funny.
I'm literally watching the viewership tick down. The more
tick down.
The more you bring up about it. Oh man.
I think it's pretty even. It just kind of depends on how you look at it. I think both of them have whether they're on the field or not past. And I mean, it's kind of a coin flip. So I just whoever is more productive this year, that's the better one. That's who I'll take. And then depth on depth on depth.
Yeah.
EJ, awesome.
EJ says, "You guys think Baron Browning could be the Broncos version of Parsons last year at edge?"
I don't know, but I want to call him Braunwing now. Like Baron Braunwing is a really cool name.
I mean, yeah. Anytime you have LeBron in your name or Braun, I mean, you're not the GOAT because Michael Jordan's the GOAT, but I mean,
you fake injuries. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah,
Pat had a good point. I hadn't considered that last comment. I hadn't considered that Gregory was recovering from his surgery when I answered that.
Oh yeah, true.
Although I think it was said before, but I definitely think that Chubb is more on the hot seat than Gregory.
Oh wait, we didn't really answer that last question though. Baron Browning could be the Broncos version.
Would he be the version of Parsons?
Potentially. I mean, that's kind of what he was at OSU. He was more of a hybrid, just kind of all over the place and just like an athletic freak. He not to the extent that Micah Parsons was, but he is I think
he's an athletic freak.
Yeah, he is an athletic freak. I think his raw score is like 9.9, like something ridiculous.
Parsons had to do that last year, though, didn't he?
He had to what?
He had to move around.
I mean, that was part of the scheme. Part of Dan Quinn's scheme over there.
I thought there were injuries. Like he had to move around because of injuries.
Oh yeah.
Well, okay. Oh yeah, I guess next year. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I think he could do very well doing that. Do I think he's going to be Micah Parsons? Not necessarily.
No, I'm with you, Boggins, because if Browning is like 60% of what Micah Parsons was with Dallas, the Denver defense is going to be like bona fide a top 3 defense. And we're talking about a defense that is like already really good. But when you have that type of versatility on your defense at linebacker, I mean, you're talking about a guy that can be used in so many different facets. I mean, you're talking about a guy that could be used to rush the passer. You could be, used as an inside linebacker. I mean, you're talking about like a Swiss Army knife in that linebacker spot. So, I mean, yeah, if he's like just a blip of what Parsons was out of that rookie year, this defense is a superstar.
All right, so let's go on to the next big topic. We've already had a question about it or a statement about it from Mark from Georgia. Rob Walton will buy the Broncos. Now, there was a rumor going, and I don't know if it was rumor or if it was true, if it was a story, but from what I read, Rob Walton was already preparing a bid for more than $4 billion for the Broncos.
From what I know or what I've heard, the only one stopping Rob, I mean, besides the NFL, because the NFL still has to approve it,
right?
The approval process afterwards. But if Rob Walton wants the Broncos, Rob Walton is going to get the Broncos.
Good luck outbidding him.
There's not. That's That's it.
Well, and that makes me do we know if Rob Walton has ever tried to bid on another team? Because it just seems weird that he has so much money and all of a sudden wants to buy a team and not like any of the other teams that have come up for sale.
I don't know. I just wish that any potential owner would be under 77 years old. Like all of them are they got like 15 years left, and then you have to deal with the whole thing like we're dealing with the Bolins right now. It's like it's unfortunate.
I was gonna say it's the Waltons. They've got like 85 different siblings.
Yeah, that's
Great
gosh,
show.
repeat in 15 years.
All I know is I'm a huge fan of Pat renaming the stadium Walmart Field at Mile High.
Walmart Field at Mile High.
I mean, can you imagine? Rob Walton buys the Broncos, and I can get a hot dog for like $2, and then we can get
value brand.
Yeah, and we can basically spend like $10 at the stadium. I mean that's the life right there. It's almost like you're back in high school sports.
It's going to be great because like when you for me, I don't get very many chances to buy Broncos gear outside of online, but now I could just go to my local Walmart and it should be some Broncos gear there. So it'll be fantastic.
And can people on social media please stop the narrative that if the Broncos are sold to a Rob Walton that he's going to move them, including I even saw it moving them to Arkansas. Like it's Broncos aren't going anywhere, folks. And I for one,
Walton, Bezos, or Kanye AB.
Well, I will say we all know who Sayer's going to choose because Pat knows that answer. I mean, because Sayer's all about the Yeezys, so we all know who's he's. I'm going to Walton's.
Sorry, Glenn, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No. I just got a picture of Sayer's shoe collection. It's just
yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, forget that.
Like, how are you picking on me when your shoe collection is terrible? Yeah, well, it's not as bad as that one.
It's like if
you throw on like those what they look like Yeezy Crocs is what they look like.
I keep telling people if Rob Walton shows more enthusiasm than his greeters do when you walk into a Walmart, I'm down.
Okay, so
but I was gonna say, all kidding aside, I mean, to have a guy with that kind of coin come in and be your owner,
the richest owner by a lot.
I am all for it. It's we would not be lacking any sort of resources at all.
I think Tepper is 17 billion and he's the richest right now, and Rob is like 70 billion. Like it's not even close.
Well, right. and I think that's what's sort of interesting on a few fronts, but I mean it's just like. And for the Broncos case, like this is probably like one more time again where you're talking about a guy like Walton who is probably waiting for the right opportunity to come, which was a lot of the ways that George Payton went into his general managership, right? Like he was waiting for that right opportunity, and with an auction certainly coming up and the opportunity to bid, I mean, you're talking about probably him as that candidate. I will say. It's
if Elon puts a bid in, the team is moving to Mars.
This just gives me a flashback to Space Jam. I don't know why.
So currently, based on Forbes real-time billionaires, Rob Walton is 19th richest person in the world.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've
thrown
Bezos' name around, but Bezos obviously doesn't have any interest in Denver.
Do you think if Walton buys a team, every draft choice will be a value pick?
Great value pick.
Wow.
Now
I will say this:
a little smiley face on it.
If contracts are going to a fully guaranteed structure, having Rob Walton as the owner definitely is an advantage. But my question is, for the people that don't really pay much attention to ownership, why would Rob Walton owning the team be a good thing, and why could it be a bad thing?
Gosh, sorry. Just side note. It's funny that 17th, 18th, and 19th richest people in the world are all Waltons.
Yeah, yeah.
That means he evenly spread his wealth.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, I think that from the standpoint of just making this an auction, to your point, Mike, and with the pros and cons, I think that when you think about it from the pros and cons, the fact that it's an auction sort of could force the hand where no one's going to outbid Walton, like because of the type of coin that he can roll in. And so from the pros, well, I mean, at that particular point, Walton might be the most qualified. Although, again, it's still interesting to me that Robert Smith's name is sort of being floated around, as far as a candidate for the Broncos. I know that Cliff put him in the article as far as a candidate for the team. And he even said that, even though it's been rumored that he's denied the fact that he's shown interest, in buying the Broncos, he's not actually publicly come out and said, I'm not buying the Denver Broncos. So I think it's a little bit interesting. So if we're talking about, if you were to predict like the top 2 finalists for your ownership, I mean, maybe it comes down to Walton and Robert Smith. I mean, I kind of like the idea of Robert Smith just because of the, he's local and he can still, bring in the coin. He's probably the only guy, maybe that can probably challenge Walton, depending on what he does, with all the ownership groups that he might be a part of.
Yeah. Colby Valdez says Broncos have a quarterback about to demand $50 million next year. Would be nice to have an owner with funny money. I don't know if, and this is completely off topic, but I don't know if Wilson would demand 50.
He might ask for that off the top, but he may end up, maybe getting a little bit less than that.
It's going to be close. That's for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be probably top 3 in the league. I mean, you still got Kyler coming up. You still got, which if I was Peyton, I would be trying to like extend him right now because Kyler coming down the line, Lamar Jackson coming down the line. Like, you got to get it before things really hit the fan.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's say it comes down to Walton and Smith. The owners in the NFL still have to approve whoever is making a bid on the Broncos, correct? So even if Rob Walton wins the bid, they could still say, nope, we want Smith.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe. But then at the same point, what was the point of the auction?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, why did they choose this form of auction if they could just say, no, we want somebody else?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, so I don't know. But as far as the $50 million talk, Pat brought up Herbert as another one of those guys. Mm-hmm. You could probably be able to get Russell Wilson maybe along the lines of maybe 45. But knowing Peyton, I mean, you're probably talking about, signing him to like, I don't know, some like 5-6 year, deal worth like, $20, each year. Because,
right.
Get him before he hits market value.
I've been scrolling this whole time trying to find Robert Smith on what his rank is.
He's not anywhere close to.
I'm in the 300s now, and
he's
we're
down
still
there.
He's down.
Well, and that's what I wondered, and obviously it's not something that I hope that they would do, but I know that there's been a big push for diversity. You never know. The owners might be like, oh, well, we want Smith because then there's diversity in the ownership instead of another old rich white guy.
But it's not up to the it's not up to it's an auction. I believe it's the highest bidder.
378.
Right. Well, and that's why I didn't know if the owners that vote on who becomes owner are able to be like, no, we don't want you, and then someone else goes like, no, we don't want you either, and just keep going until they get to the one they want.
I don't think it works that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of Russell Wilson, I'm scraping the ground for news here because there was nothing this week.
Well, you were talking about the pros and cons of the Walton bid.
Right. So what would be a pro and what would be a con of the owners? Because there's
the pro is
things the owners do and certain things that they have no control over.
The pros, the resources. For me, the con is I mean, there are a couple, and I saw Pat put it in there too. But for me, there's age and the fact that like Boggins said, he's 77, and we could could be faced with the same situation unless there's a distinct plan put into place, like right at the beginning, which I would suspect that would actually have to be the case. And then the second is, like Pat mentioned in the comments, is potential ethics when you amass that type of wealth. What kind of things could creep up and jeopardize the your ownership bid process, or your approval process, I should say. So I've never heard anything really about Rob Walton aside from just knowing him as running the company for all those years. But you just never know when the investigations start going in.
Well, I think the biggest question that everyone has is, if we get a new owner, is he going to move the team?
Based on what, Mike? I mean,
we're right. That's what I'm saying.
I think people were pulling a quote. People were pulling a quote from him that said that what is like his father or always pushed for change or something like that, and he is a big fan of change and blah 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 and experimentation and blah 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 and stuff. And I just took that as that means we're getting the old uniforms back.
That's well, and I had talked to Bronco Bill about it because he'd brought up a concern about it on the phone, and I told him, I was like, listen, you have to look at where they would move the team that's a bigger market than Denver. Like, where could they move the team that's a better fit than Denver? And right now, there isn't any place.
Well, every game is sold out. Every game is sold out longer than I've been alive. I mean, to tell you that. Well, so since 69, every home game is sold out, and our waiting list exceeds the number of seats presently in the stadium. So there's actually no bona fide reason. Yeah.
And as a person who just got to visit Denver for the first time and got to see the stadium in person, there's a lot of space. They can build a brand new Purdy stadium right there. Yeah, and it would be fantastic and garner all sorts of more money.
To Boggan's point, though, and like it is a focal point. Like, but between like any of the stuff that's in the Denver scene, the Denver skyline scene, like you're talking about it from the standpoint of like you have Coors Field, which is probably your biggest focal point of that entire skyline. People can hate on the Rockies all they want, but Coors Field is like a huge focal point of that skyline. And then you got, Mile High, like you got Mile High, Empower Field and Mile High, which is on its own, side, basically just on its own. So, I mean, like it's a true focal point for the city. And so they could break it down and build a new one. Or as far as the ownership goes, I could just sell my own spandex collection and, throw my head in the ring.
Yeah.
Form your own group with Alex.
I don't think there's enough time to actually go through the collection and
the entire collection and price it out.
Call it Camdex.
The Real 92 PC says cough, Portland cough. That's not even the one. Where'd it go?
It's
right there. Cough, no. Portland cough.
No.
How is Portland a better market than Denver?
Come on, Pat. Come on.
Well, and I brought up like, well, there's San Diego and then there's St. Louis, but they already had debates and disputes with their stadium. What's going to make a new team want to move there? Like, there aren't any better options than Denver. So why would you move?
No one likes Portland.
Did Pat write that comment while he was getting a physical? Like he typed Portland in between the cough?
You might have.
That's funny.
So I've seen a couple of questions, and I kind of want to dig into it here for a little bit. Who do you guys think is going to be the breakout player for 2022 on the Broncos?
Take your pick.
You get one.
No, I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Like, I mean, you could go up and down that entire wide receiving core. You can go to a certain tight end. I mean, you could go on the defense. I'm going Jerry Jeudy. I feel like that's your answer. You're talking about a guy that is a bona fide superstar in the making and a guy that could literally challenge Courtland Sutton just in his breakout year for the best wide receiver in the team. And so I think that, I think you're talking about literally a guy that even after that one season, not to go too overreactionary, but I think you could very well talk about a wide receiver that could challenge, Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams is the best route runner in the league after his breakout season.
See, I'm going with Cortland Sutton, and I was wondering if you can have a breakout year with a $15 million contract. But I think with Russell lobbing these bombs to him, I mean, but really take your pick. I think all these guys are going to probably, all our receivers are probably going to have better numbers than they ever have. But I'm going with Cortland.
Really?
Really? Whoa, this guy's who is this? This guy is really smart and attractive. That's cool.
Is that one of your? Wow. We sure that's not a burner account?
But so we just used Mr. Boggins as a burner.
Evil Mr. Boggins.
I'm going to say Russell Wilson, and this is the reason I say that.
Okay.
Yes, he's won Super Bowls. Yes, he's been to the Pro Bowl. Yes, he's been to all. He has all pros. Never won an MVP. Never. I think this year he wins the MVP.
Mike, he's never gotten an MVP vote.
Right. And so like there's so many people like, oh well, he's on the decline. He's injured all the time. He's not as good as you think he is. This is going to be the year where he's like, no.
And think about this. Russell Wilson has never been over 6 foot before.
How dare he?
He's like
well, that depends because he's jumped in the air, which put him over 6 foot.
No, you're right.
So how many games in Russell's career has he missed total?
I think most of them were last year, and that was what, 3?
5 or 6?
He missed 3 total. Last year was the first games that he missed. Yeah. So it's like when Stafford, everyone was talking about him being injury prone, and you go and you look and he had hardly missed any games in his entire career for injury. But people pass these narratives around, you know.
Sam Martin.
Not if we get Matt Araiza. You know, I mean, if we draft Matt Araiza, the punt god king, I mean, Sam Martin's job is in jeopardy at that point.
How do you mute him? I think
can you mute him? I'm just wondering. I also shout out to my boy Dalton Reisner. I think Dalton is going to have a season too. His game change is going to be where he utilizes athleticism more. I'm excited to see.
Did he pick you up in his truck and you go to the Polar Plunge?
I didn't go. I forgot that I played football at the exact time. No, I played football at the exact same time, so I couldn't go, unfortunately.
That's terrible.
I still donated.
All right, so speaking of players and breakout seasons, they just had their first voluntary offseason workout yesterday. That doesn't amount to much because all they did was sit in the classroom and learn stuff. How? So
I've seen hype videos of Russell Wilson throwing one pass to Jerry Jeudy. So shut up, Mike. You don't know what you're talking about.
I saw him slow motion walking into the building.
Yeah,
and you were
I made a wallpaper about it. God, pay attention.
The biggest takeaway from the voluntary workouts is I want to know how I can get my hands on a sleeveless hoodie, that Russell Wilson has. That's my biggest takeaway.
Am I the only one that thought he was wearing a backpack? Like the first time watching it, those extra little sleeve ends on this side, I kept thinking like, is he wearing a backpack? He's a backpack guy. Okay. And then it wasn't. It was just like some custom made thing that he, of course, had. I swear he has a seamstress with him at all times, just like in the back of his number 3 jet.
Cam would cut the sleeves off and then put 4 layers on underneath the
hoodie. Or I would wear like a long sleeve underneath it, or I wear another hoodie underneath it, and then
long sleeve spandex.
But I got to tell you guys, the fact is, for months we were talking about Aaron Rodgers, we were talking about Russell Wilson, and who is there with his teammates? Who has had his teammates, out passing, bonding?
Drew Lock. Oh no! Oh, sorry. And, sorry.
Rodgers with his receiving core influx is nowhere to be seen at the Packers camp. That told me everything I needed to know that, man, we got the right guy.
Yeah.
Now, do we know what players were there and what players weren't?
Where?
At the voluntary workouts.
So far?
Because I know there was a big thing about it last year. Do we know how many actually showed up to voluntary workouts?
Well, I was going to say, so far, everything that we know, it seems like
All the
lot
receivers.
like everybody almost showed up. Like, I know that someone even asked, Justin Simmons, why'd you show up to, the voluntary workout? And it's like, it was this new culture. And the minute you begin voluntary workout is the day that you get, to be bought in. And, to Alex's point, it's like, this is like the very first day, it's like that Nathaniel Hackett can address the full team, right? And so the fact that you have that, I mean, as to truly create that vision and that culture for the team, the first day of voluntary workout should be mandatory at that point.
Yeah, and we don't really have any holdout potentials right now, and we have with a new coach, a new quarterback being Russell Wilson. I don't expect many players not showing up. I actually even the optional times I just don't see it.
And I will say, aside from personal reasons and aside from or reasons to hate on the fact that Jerry Jeudy was not there for the first few days, and all of a sudden he shows up and is collecting passes from Russell Wilson. I will say, from the standpoint of when you think of I don't know, the standpoint of that is the first day. And so if someone decided to not show up for personal reasons or whatever, that's okay. But if someone decided not to show up to a voluntary workout like that, or the day one of Russell Wilson showing up, or whatever, and Nathaniel Hackett's, first day, I'd be a little bit upset. I'm not going to lie.
It's like Boggins skipping a charitable polar plunge event and going to play flag football instead.
Right?
We would have done football too, just
Oh yeah. So the last little bit of news is there wasn't a lot going on. Russell Wilson throws out the first pitch at the Rockies, the first opening game.
But to be outdone by, I think it was a Japanese figure skater. Did you guys see that? Absolutely dumb. Sorry, Russ, but you got absolutely dominated by a figure skater who decided to do a triple axel off the mound and then land and then throw a perfect strike. It was insane.
Didn't Simone Biles do something like that?
She did a backflip. I think she did a backflip. But if you guys haven't seen, go look it up, and you'll look at Russ's and be like, huh.
As long as it wasn't a 50-cent throw. I'm
a Baba Booey.
Wow.
Yeah, that was probably the worst, besides Mariah Carey, where she did a little quaint afterwards, I'm still cute.
Maybe he should have done that.
Yeah. Just as long as he didn't hang upside down like he did during the Super Bowl halftime show, where it looked like he'd been smuggling marshmallows.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not the mini ones either.
Well, I was going to say from a Denver sports perspective, and the first pitch, that was pretty cool because you had the opportunity to see Chris Bryant, the guy who literally signed his big mega deal with the Colorado Rockies the day of the Russell Wilson presser. And then he gets his presser, and to see both of them, Bryant catch the first pitch, I thought was a really cool moment. And then holding up the jersey. I don't know if Chris Bryant signed that jersey as well. But I mean, it was a pretty cool moment for the state of Colorado and for Denver sports. So to see something like that, I thought was, really, because you don't see that very often. And from my vantage point, being a huge baseball fan and being a huge advocate for Nolan Arenado as the best third baseman that we've ever seen, to see the irony of the fact that, conversations, going back to Chris Bryant, and Nolan Arenado, to all the irony that was Russell Wilson, I thought was sort of full circle at that point for Denver sports.
I was wrong. Sorry. She was Korean, and I put it in the chat just for people to look and show how much better she is than Russell Wilson.
Mike, throw up the Brad Smith comment again, because I think that's a really good point. You talk about Peyton and Russell being very similar in terms of, in Cortland's press conference today, he was talking about the the cooks, like the staff, everybody is feeling this and elevating themselves and their own jobs, even if they're not players. And that would be a very tough explanation to your quarterback, why he is able to get all these things done and put his heart and soul on and to not show up. I would imagine it's probably pretty close to 100%. Yeah. And I would love to have seen the list of players that didn't show up with Peyton, and I would think that would be probably 100%.
Well, I was gonna say that's one of the reasons why I brought up what I brought up earlier was like I not to be a huge overreact, but it's like I would hate to be one of those players that was not there for those voluntary works, unless it was like personal reasons, because it's just like, I mean, especially a conversation like it's knowing the fact, and also knowing the fact that Russell, as we all know, has like been in communication with those players already. We all know like that, and that's just a assumption at that point, like that Russell's been in conversation with all the players on the football team. Like, how would you feel if you literally just said like, I'm sorry, I can't go. Oh, is there a reason? No, I just had something to come up or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the baby excuse doesn't work for me. After the first one, it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
You show up to the game.
Understood.
All right. That's right. Yeah. So that's going to about do it for us. What did I just say? That is going to about do it for us. There you go.
If you say it 10 times fast, you'll get it.
You don't have to like be able to speak well to have a podcast. So
no, not at all.
I mean, well, I was gonna say, and two, for Christmas, I'm gonna buy a Boggins a phonics kit so that he can be able to, think things clearly.
At least I recognize that I didn't say it right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I at least get that.
True.
So make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on notifications so you can catch all of our content when it is posted. Tune into our other podcasts. The Wild Wild West is tomorrow at 7:30, 6:30, 5:30, 4:30. Nothing Rhymes podcast on Thursday, and Broncos Breakdown hosted by Bronco Bill is on Friday. Both of those at 7, 6, 5, 4. You have yourselves a great rest of the night. Go Broncos, and we will see you for the Wild Wild West tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.